Welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Social Sciences, SOSS. Certificate in Environmental Studies, Case. TS5 Ecology, Environment and Tourism. Block 1A Environment, An Introduction. Unit 4 Communities in Nature.
Nature. 4.0 Objectives. After studying this unit, you should be able to understand the basic characteristics of a community, appreciate the nature and importance of interactions among different species and individuals in a living community, learn about the strategies adopted by living organisms to share and utilize the available resources, or realize the importance of the concept of interconnectivity and to develop a holistic perspective of nature, and formulate biodiversity-friendly tourism norms and practices. 4.1 Introduction. You have studied that a variety of biotic and abiotic factors constitute an ecosystem. You have also seen that the various abiotic factors of an ecosystem viz. Air, light, water, soil and even rocks affect the survival of living organisms. So do the biotic factors, i.e., the neighborhood plants, animals and microorganisms. Within an ecosystem, each living being or an organism has an actual area in which it resides. This space, including all the factors within it, is the organism's habitat. An organism does not exist in isolation but has dynamic interaction with other organisms as well as with the abiotic environment. Each organism plays a specific role in an ecosystem which is referred to as its niche. A niche includes parameters like food, space, temperature, water, and appropriate conditions for mating. It also includes the organism's behavior and the ways in which this behavior changes with different seasons and at different times of the day. To put it in simple terms, habitat refers to the actual physical site occupied by an organism or its address, whereas niche is related to its profession. The interactions among organisms within ecosystems are varied. These can be at two levels: at the level of populations and at the level of community. Before we go deeper into these interactions, first let us understand the ecological meanings of a population, a community, and an ecosystem, and see how these are related. Individuals of the same species constitute a population. Populations of different species of plants and animals inhabiting and sharing resources of an area are collectively called a biotic community or simply a community. A community together with its surrounding non-living environment is called an ecosystem. With the understanding of the fundamental ecological CZPTS, linkages in nature and the world biomes in the earlier units, you will be able to appreciate the nature and dynamics of biotic communities and their interactions, which constitute the main focus of this unit. 4.2 Community Characteristics. After having discussed what is a community and WHA constitutes it, let us now have a closer look at biotic community. A community has three basic characteristics: productivity, diversity and resilience. All the three are interrelated. Familiarity with these characteristics is essential to understand the nature and function of natural communities. 4.2.1 Productivity. The word productivity is derived from production, which refers to the production of biomass. In unit, you have studied that the production of biomass is a manifestation of energy storage transfer reactions. All the organisms after the first trophic level obtain their energy and nutrient requirements from lower trophic levels. A community's productivity is measured as the rate of production of biomass. Productivity is dependent on physical factors like climate, air, water currents, soil type, landforms and altitude or depth. The variation in the productivity in different communities is due to the variation in the above-mentioned factors. Generally speaking, the average productivity of terrestrial ecosystems is higher than the marine ecosystems, except shallow coastal waters, which are highly productive. The number of different species in the community, the number of individuals in each species, and total number of individuals in a community. 4.2.3 Resilience. You might have noticed that if there are some natural disturbances, the communities recover to their original state after a period of time. This capacity of a community to recover from any kind of disturbance is known as resilience. In nature, the physical environment poses a continuous challenge to the life forms with disturbances of various kinds. For example, consider weather conditions which are seldom same for a few days at a stretch, or for that matter even during one day. There are daily changes in temperature, wind velocity and its direction. Besides the natural disturbances, the human factor also inflicts minor perturbations to major disruptions in the communities. How? Think of a situation when an Area with thick natural vegetation is cleared for construction purposes. This onslaught may be too severe for the community to recover back. Consider another situation, where a large tree in a forest had fell, resulting in the formation of a vacant area. After a span of time, the natural growth of plants of various kinds seals this gap. To say it in ecological terms, homeostasis is inbuilt in community resilience. Homeostasis means inherent capacity of a system to revert back to normal state after perturbation. 4.3 Species interaction within communities. In a community, the populations of both plants and animals live together, share common resources, depend on each other and meet their requirements through mutual cooperation and interaction. 4.3.1 Dominant plants define the conditions. As you have seen in Unit 2, the organisms of a community are either producers or consumers. Based on their food procuring mechanisms, the producers exert a dominant influence on the community. Think of any terrestrial community with which you are familiar, say for example a forest. The community in a forest is dominated by trees. Some forests even have specific names depending on the dominating species of tree, e.g., sal forest, pine forest and so on. The dominant plant species are usually the largest in size or are in highest numbers amongst the other life forms. You may recall that plants foo solar energy and make up the largest proportion of biomass in a community. They not only constitute the food base of the community but also modify the environment, determining by their presence what kind of organisms can live in that area. In a forest, for example, the different kinds of trees modify the local environmental conditions under their canopies. The microclimatic modifications create new conditions enabling the survival of different kinds of plants and animal species, which may not survive in the absence of the microclimate created by the canopies. The dominant plants have a controlling influence in the area and govern the community. Composition. 4.3.2 Kinds of interactions. Things do not remain quiet and static. After different plant and animal populations have inhabited an area, each individual organism actively interacts with the biotic and abiotic components of the habitat. In the Units 1 and 3 you have seen the ways in which these organisms interact with their physical environment. In this unit we shall concentrate only on the interactions among the living members of the communities. Basically, three types of interactions, namely predation, symbiosis and competition, exist in a living community. A. Predation. In any ecosystem, only the producers are capable of manufacturing their own food, whereas all the consumers, be the herbivores, carnivores or omnivores, or even the scavengers and decomposers, depend on other sources for their food. Some of the consumers are also known as predators. A predator is an organism that feeds directly upon another organism, and the prey may or may not be killed in the process. This definition, while separating the live feeders from dead feeders, includes a wide spectrum of organisms. The herbivores, carnivores and omnivores are predators. So are the various kinds of parasites. Parasites are organisms that live upon a host organism and derive nourishment from it, usually without killing it. Pathogens that cause disease in host organisms are also included in this category. Predation is an important factor that determines balance in communities. The adult prey organism, their eggs and young ones serve as food for predators. Which of these developmental stages of the prey is consumed by the predator is crucial for the regeneration and growth of the prey population. The prey species are able to survive despite the predator pressure because of their adopting the following strategies: the ability to regenerate the lost part, development of tough, sticky exterior, and development of toxic covering to counter or escape the predators. B. Competition. It is another kind of interaction within the species of a community. This interaction is mainly of antagonistic type, as the organisms compete with each other for basic environmental resources required for their survival. These resources are mainly energy and matter in usable forms, space and specific sites for various life activities. The plants compete with each other for space for spreading roots and shoots to ensure maximum absorption of sunlight, water, and nutrients. Animals too compete for space for living, reproducing and feeding purposes. An organism, whether plant or animal, faces basically two kinds of competition. One from the members of the same species, intraspecific competition, and second with the members of other species, interspecific competition. The intraspecific competition is intense as the members of the same species have similar requirements for space and nutrition. Therefore, they compete directly for these environmental resources. The plants limit and cope with intraspecific competition through following ways. The seeds of many plants are unable to germinate and establish under the shade of the parent plant. Another strategy is development of diverse seed dispersal mechanisms in plants that ensure wider dissemination of their seeds to faraway places. You might have seen some hairy or feathery, free-floating structures in air during the dry season. These are the seeds representing active dispersal. Strategy. A third strategy to limit competition is by way of secretion of some substances by leaves and roots of certain plants. These substances have inhibitory effect on the growth of other individuals of the same or other species in their vicinity. The animals too have strategic ways to minimize or eliminate completely intraspecific competition. The phenomenon of territoriality exhibited by some animals is one such strategy in which the area surrounding their home site or nesting site is defined and defended against intruders. In this way, birds and many invertebrate species space out and avoid competition among members of their populations. You might have noticed this phenomenon in sparrows. They very aggressively defend and guard their territory, especially during their breeding season. The territory may be occupied by a mated pair, or it may be a family-based unit, in case of socied animals like wolves and elephants. In addition to defending their territory by aggressive behavior, certain animals make use of specific body secretions to mark and delineate the boundaries of their close association. This association is the result of coevolution of the symbiotic species. Over the geological time scale, three major kinds of symbiotic relationships are seen amongst organisms: commensalism, mutualism and parasitism. Commensalism, a relationship in which one species clearly gets benefited while the other species is neither benefited nor harmed, i.e., a one-sided relationship. Individuals deriving benefit are often physically attached to the other species. Have you noticed an epiphyte? Epiphytes are plants that grow on branches of other plants. They derive their nourishment from air and rainwater and only get support for their growth from the host plants. Similarly, marine animals like the barnacles grow on certain actively moving animals. This way they not only get protected from predation but also get to newer sources of food. Like the epiphytes, they too do not harm the organism to which one they are attached. Another well-known example of commensalism is that of a small tropical fish, clownfish and the sea anemone. The sea anemones, as you know, are marine animals having stinging tentacles. The clownfish have evolved certain adaptations that allow them to live secured from its predators among the deadly tentacles of anemone. These tentacles quickly paralyze other predatory fish species of clowdish. Mutualism, as indicated by the word mutual, the association between unrelated species is beneficial to both. A well-known example of such a relationship is typified by the association between a genus of stinging ants and plants belonging to genus Acacia. Its modified leaves bear a pair of hollow thorns which are inhabited by the stinging ant. The hollow thorns provide a protected site for ant larvae. In addition, the ants also eat nectar produced by the nectaries present at the base of the leaf petiole. Ants inhabiting the thorns and feeding on the nectaries ferociously protect the plant from herbivores by attacking and stinging. Thus the plant is effectively protected from the herbivores and the ants are in turn assured shelter and food. Another commonly seen example of mutualism is the association between certain birds and cattle. The birds like cattle egret spend most of their time clinging to the grazing animal, picking insects from their skin. Thus the birds are provided with food and the animal is benefited by getting its parasites removed. Parasitism. In this relationship, one species derives all the benefit at the expense of the associated species. Human beings often become victim of various types of parasites, e.g., pathogenic bacteria, viruses and a wide variety of invertebrates. You might have heard of inclinal hookworms, entamoeba, and malarial parasite infesting a large number of humans. From time to time, hair flea is another example of human parasites. The color of the flea matches with human hair and their flattened bodies enable them to hide and slip through hair easily. Among plants, the best known example of parasite is the dodder plant. It is a wire-like plant devoid of any leaves. This parasitic plant establishes contacts with the host plant by means of peg-like structures called haustoria. Through the haustoria, the parasite draws nutrition at the expense of the host plant. As a result, the parasite flourishes and the growth of the host is impaired. 4.4 Organization in communities. The various interactions between organisms of a community represent strategies employed by different species for securing basic needs for survival and sustenance. All these interactions form the basis of community organization. The organizational pattern of a community provides the framework for the organisms to interact in various ways. You may be thinking, what is meant by community organization? It refers to the organic and systematic structure of the community. To put it in another way, it is the arrangement and functional relationship of the various strata of life in a community. Usually this arrangement is typical of an ecosystem. That is why it is possible to distinguish one ecosystem from another, i.e., a forest from a grassland from a tundra, and so on. To get an overall picture of community organization, it is necessary to know about two aspects of the community: resource partitioning and stratification. 4.4.1 Resource partitioning. As you know, a community is an assemblage of populations of various species of plants and animals. These coexist in a given habitat by sharing the available resources through their partitioning among themselves. In any community, the resources are finite. Then the question is how the organisms ensure effective partitioning of the resources amongst themselves. Each and every species over a geological time period has evolved a clear-cut strategy for this purpose. Each species follows some sort of an unwritten code and knows which resources to be utilized at what time and from where. All this information is inbuilt in their genetic makeup. A few examples discussed below illustrate various aspects of resource partitioning. Which resource to harness? The organisms can be categorized as herbivores or carnivores based on the nature of the food they consume, i.e., whether of plant or of animal origin. Thus, the animals in a community consume either green plants or feed on other animal species. Herbivores just do not eat any green plant, but have their own liking for a particular grass, shrub, or tree species. They are selective grazers. The insects and birds too are selective feeders as they feed on specific plant parts, i.e., leaf, fruit, or bark. Depending on the kind of food source to be tapped, the organisms have developed various kinds of specializations in tail bodies, parts. The following example of many species of birds in a forest would clarify this point. In a forest, there are birds that consume grains or seeds, and there are birds that live on carrion. Their beaks are evolved accordingly. The grain eaters have long, thin beaks, and the car-tilder iron eaters have long, strong curved beaks to tear the flesh apart. Their claws HPVE also evolved in line with the same objective, according to the seeds, insects, or whatever they have chosen to eat. The carrion eaters have strong, fierce claws with which they can hold and tear their prey. In addition to the structural specializations, the seed-eating birds further specialize in their choice of seeds. Thus, two populations of seed-eating birds can share the different seed resources in a community and avoid competition. From where to harness? In addition to developing structural specializations, organisms have specific sites in the habitat for tapping their resource, i.e., they have subdivided their habitat for this purpose. For example, in a forest, different bird species occupy or live at different heights. Some of them nest and forage at the higher branches, some at middle level, some near the ground, and some actually forage from the forest floor. There is a classic example of resource partitioning seen in small birds known as warblers found in North America. These are small colorful birds whose different species coexist in the same forests. All these species feed on insects living in the spruce tree, but they forage in different zones of the tree. Though there is slight overlap in their feeding domains, otherwise each species has its own marked area that varies with height in the tree and distance from the middle. A similar partitioning of resources exists among plants also. 3 species of annuals growing in a field have a short time span to complete their life cycle. Solar energy is available in plenty, but they derive nutrients and moisture largely from the same soil. Let us see how these closely growing species manage to produce the essential resources required for their growth and reproduction while they coexist in the same habitat. The 3 species have different root structures, occupying different soil depths. This helps them to avoid direct competition and enables them to draw the required nutrients from different soil strata. The above examples highlight different patterns of resource allocation to avoid interspecific competition is in action. Different species coexist by dividing the resources in some manner, avoiding direct competition with the others. When to harness? In addition to utilizing different structural devices and different places as tools in resource partitioning, timing is another factor that organisms utilize in resource partitioning. For example, flowers of different species bloom at different times of the day and night to attract specific pollinators. Similarly, various kinds of insects are the food of birds and bats. Some insect species are active during daytime, and others at night. This strategy provides non-competitive feeding opportunities for day-active birds and night-active bats. Similarly, migrating and seasonal birds have also worked out a rule of rotation in which they follow and get replaced by others according to the season and thus overcome competition. One of the best example of resource sharing on the basis of differential timings is the Serengeti National Park in Africa. A large number of wild animals living in the Serengeti ecosystem have remarkable adjustment for the available resources. Many species of zebras and more than 24 species of antelopes constitute the major populations of grazing animals that inhabit the Serengeti ecosystem. So many grazing species coexist by feeding on different grass, herb and shrub species. So far so good, as there is no overlap in their resources. But there are some species of antelopes which have common preference for certain plant species. The point worth appreciating here is that these species graze in these common plant resources at different time of the plant growth. This strategy of sharing food resources involving differential timings by the grazing, browsing animals thus does not affect the community adversely. This is the reason that a multi-species community of the Serengeti ecosystem is so stable and sustaining. 4.4.2 Stratification. Stratification is a distinctive feature of a community. The dictionary meaning of the term is the arrangement in strata or layers. In context of a community, it means how the life forms are arranged in a vertical order. Stratification of a community is determined largely by the life forms of plants, their size, branching pattern and leaves. Light is the crucial factor that governs the vertical structure of a plant community, which in fact provides a physical structure or a framework for accommodating different animal species. Communities have characteristic stratification patterns. For example, a well-developed forest ecosystem may have up to 7 or 8 strata which can be differentiated into canopy, understory, shrub, herb or ground layer, forest floor, root layer and the soil strata. The vines, epiphytes and parasites represent separate strata. The canopy, which is the primary site for capturing the solar energy, has the major influence on the structure and life of the rest of the forest. In an open canopy forest, considerable amount of sunlight reaches the lower layers and the forest floor. As a result, the understory trees, shrub and the herbaceous ground layer are well developed. In a closed canopy forest, enough sunlight is not available to the underlying substrata. In such a situation, the understory trees, shrub and herbaceous layer are poorly developed. In addition to light, soil moisture is another factor that influences stratification. The herb layer, particularly, depends on soil moisture conditions. Other factors, such as the slope 6, density of the overstory that vary from place to place in a forest, also influence the nature of the herb layer. The lowest, aerial layer of the forest is the forest floor. It is the site where the important process of forest litter decomposition takes place and nutrients are released for nutrient cycle. The status of this layer is dependent on all the above factors. A forest, having all the well-developed strata, generates a vast amount of litter, making the forest floor also an immensely active stratum. The degree of vertical stratification has a profound influence on the diversity of animal life in the community. A strong correlation exists between the foliage height diversity and bird species diversity. In the places having increased vertical stratification, there is increased availability of resources and living space, which favors a certain degree of specialization. The examples discussed in subsection 4.4.1 illustrate this point. The grasslands with their 2 strata hold about 6 or 7 species of birds, all ground nesters. On the other hand, a well-stratified forest may support 35 or more species, occupying different strata according to their specializations. As mentioned in the beginning of this section, we have seen how stratification and partitioning of resources are 2 important and mutually dependent dimensions of a community. Aquatic ecosystems like lakes and oceans too exhibit stratification. Their stratification pattern is determined by light, temperature and oxygen regimes. A well-stratified lake usually has the following layers. First is a layer of freely circulating surface water, the epilimnion. Since light is available in plenty, therefore, it is dominated by plants. It is the chief site of photosynthesis. The second layer, the metalimnion, is characterized by thermocline, i.e., a steep and rapid decline in temperature. Besides the presence of few plant species adapted to low light, decomposition is most active in this layer. The third layer, the hypolimnion, is a deep cold and dense layer of water, often with low amount of dissolved oxygen. Next is A. Layer of bottom mud. What is common in the community stratification in terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems? They both possess an autotrophic layer concentrated where light is available in plenty. You may recall that the autotrophic layer harvests solar energy and manufactures food from simple substances. In forest, this layer is largely confined to the canopy layer, in grasslands, in the herb or the ground layer, and in lakes and seas in the upper layers of water. Along with autotrophic layer, there is also a heterotrophic layer. The strata constituting this layer obtain their food from the autotrophs, transfer energy, and circulates matter by means of herbivory, predel iron and decomposition. 4.5 Biodiversity. The word biodiversity sounds very familiar, isn't it? But wait, something is missing. Often, it is seen tied up with another word, conservation. That is, biodiversity conservation. Now, it appears all the more familiar. You may wonder as to what is the reason of so frequent reference of these two terms. Biodiversity conservation is in fact a major environmental issue of present times. In the last section of this unit, besides discussing the meaning of the term biodiversity, we shall take up three important aspects of biodiversity: its importance, the reasons for its loss, and its conservation. But first of all, let us examine what the term biodiversity refers to. 4.5.1 What is biodiversity? The general meaning of the term is self-explanatory. In precise and scientific terms, biodiversity is the totality of genes, species and ecosystems. The three elements of biodiversity are elaborated in the following three paragraphs. The total genes, also known as genetic diversity, refer to variation of genes within species. It includes I. the various populations of the same species, such as the thousands of traditional rice varieties in India, and E. the genetic variation within populations. For example, it is very high among Indian rhinos, and is very low among cheetahs. The total species, or the species diversity, refers to the variety of species in a region. For example, the total species of an island A is 115, having 10 species of birds, 100 species of beetles, 5 species of Lisa FDS, and so on. Besides being expressed in numerals, it is also expressed in qualitative terms. Some examples are given below. Island DA has greater taxonomic diversity than island B. More species live on land than in the sea. The terrestrial species are more closely related to each other as compared to marine species. Ecosystem diversity refers to the species or genetic diversity of communities. By using a set of criteria, the community diversity estimations of mega ecosystems are undertaken at the national and subnational levels. According to a recent classification by the Wildlife Institutes of India, the country has been divided into following 10 biogeographic regions. 1. Trans-Himalayan 6. Deccan Peninsula. 2. Himalayan 7. Gangetic Plain. 3. Indian Desert. 8. Northeast India. 4. Semi-arid. 9. Islands. Box 4.2. Ecosystem diversity of the biogeographic zones of India. The Trans-Himalayan region has sparse vegetation, but has the richest wild sheep and goat community in the world. The show leopard, panthers encea, and the migratory black-necked crane, GM's nigercolus, are also found here. The Himalayan region, having one of the highest mountain ranges in the world, is located at the boundary of many biogeographical regions. This area has rich species diversity. In the northwest is the desert region, with extensive grasslands. The Great Indian Bustard, Ardotes nignsepes, an endangered bird, is found in this region. Adjoining to the desert is the semi-arid region. It is a transitional zone between the desert and the Western Ghats. The Western Ghats are famous for their dense forests. Beyond the Ghats lie the Deccan Plateau. This region is mainly semi-arid. In the north are the Gangetic Plains that extend up to the Himalayan foothills. THC Northeast region is the richest biodiversity center of the country. Several species of orchids, bamboos, ferns and other plants occur here. This region is also considered as the domestication center of cultivated plants like banana, mango, citrus and jute. Our country has two major groups of IPLANDS, Lakshadweep Islands situated in the Arabian Sea, and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands situated in the Bay of Bengal. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands have lush evergreen forests harboring several endemic plant and animal species. The coasts constitute another important biogeographical region of the country. India has a coastline extending over 5 5OOKILOMILLISECUND. The peculiar mangrove vegetation is characteristic of the estuarine tracts along the coast. 4.5.2 Importance of biodiversity. It is no exaggeration to say that biodiversity is just as important as oxygen and water for sustaining life. Think of any sphere of life, be it health, food, clothing, aesthetics, industry, sports or recreation, each one is linked to either the wild or domesticated component of biodiversity, even in today's high-tech society where most things can be synthesized in laboratories. A good percentage of modern medicines prescribed are of biotic origin. Numerous life-saving drugs have been isolated from flowering plants. Quinine from the cinchona tree is used to treat malaria, digitalis from foxglove plant is used to treat chronic heart trouble, the morphine and cocaine from the poppy and coca shrubs respectively are used to reduce pain. Many other forms of drugs extracted from plants are used to treat leukemia, several forms of tumorous cancers and several heart ailments. A recent exciting find is Taxol. It is a chemical extracted from the bark of yew tree. Taxol has been found very effective in treatment of ovarian cancer, as it specifically targets and kills the cancerous cells without harming the normal cells. In addition to plants, microorganisms too have been widely used in the manufacture of medicines. More than 3,000 antibiotics have been extracted from microorganisms. We all are familiar GTH, the important antibiotics penicillin and tetracycline. Another product of microorganisms, i.e., cyclosporin, was developed from a soil fungus. Its revolution is the heart and kidney transplant surgery by suppressing immune reactions. Aspirin and many other drugs that are all synthesized were first discovered in wild. A large number of wild plant and animal species that exist could be potential food sources for the future. Most plant species have not been explored so far and their utility remains to be tapped. A large number of human tribals inhabiting remote areas or forests look to wildlife for most of their proteins. It is estimated that about 30,000 species of plants have edible parts, but 90% of the world's food presently comes from just 20 plant species. A recently discovered tropical species, the winged beans, is a potential source of food. Every part of this plant is edible. Its leaves taste like spinach, young pods are like green beans, young seeds like peas, mature seeds like soybeans, and its underground stems are like potatoes and are rich in proteins. Another positive attribute is that it is a fast-growing, nodule-bearing plant that enriches soil with F-med nitrogen. Such plants and others like them from the wild give hope to feed growing millions. The value of biodiversity is particularly apparent in agriculture. For generations, people have raised a wide range of crops and livestock to stabilize and increase production. These traditional practices have evolved genetically different strains of crop plants which are now being abandoned in favor of newer high-yield strains. Unfortunately, these high-yielding strains are genetically homogeneous and have a narrow genetic base and are highly vulnerable to insect pests and various diseases. The predominant strain of rice grown in Asia, for instance, was devastated by a virus, but one wild strain from India had genes for resistance. Through intensive breeding, a resistant hybrid was created which is now widely grown. This example clearly shows the importance of genetic diversity or the gene pools for promoting and ensuring high agricultural yield. Industries also use a wide variety of plant and animal products and thus benefit from a rich diversity of species. As many as 2,000 plant species throughout the world are known for their economic importance. The building, furniture, and paper MAKMG industries use more than 100 different species of trees. Cotton, flax, hemp, jute and agave provide fiber for manufacture of textile, ropes, and other articles. Natural substances from a wide variety of plant species are used in the manufacture of rubber, dyes, tanning agents, perfumes, resins, gums, oils, insecticides and other products. Thus no sphere of life remains untouched by biodiversity. Even the diverse human cultures are linked to biodiversity. The living environment has been an important factor in the development and shaping of human cultures. We all know that humans too influence their environment. Thus, diverse environmental conditions created have been significantly important in the development of diverse cultures. Coming back to the point or linkage between culture and biodiversity. Though the cultures differ from one another in diverse ways, but all revolve around biodiversity. That biodiversity is very important for human survival and sustenance was known to man since he descended on this earth and started practicing agriculture and domesticating animals to fulfill his needs. Thus emerged certain strictures for the use, sharing and conservation of these biological resources. With the passage of time and further development of human society, these strictures gradually became deeply ingrained values of human cultures. The importance of biodiversity is reflected in various ways in different cultures, in religious beliefs, land management practices, crop selection and diet, art, music, social structure, and even language. Indeed, the variety of life is the backdrop against which many cultures have flourished or vanished. 4.53 Biodiversity and the ecological balance. A high level of diversity is believed to confer a high degree of stability to and remain unchanged indefinitely if undisturbed. On the other hand, simple ecosystems like the tundra are highly fragile and experience sudden and immense shifts in population size. Other, simplified ecosystems like a wheat field shows extreme vulnerability to change and may collapse if abiotic and biotic factors shift too much. The ecosystem balance is a precarious entity. In the eventuality of any disturbance, the resultant effect on the ecosystem is almost nil, as the large diversity of organisms reorganize and adjust according to the changed conditions. Imagine what would happen if the ecosystem had a low diversity? The effect of the slightest disturbance would disturb the balance, and larger disturbance may lead to total collapse of the ecosystem. Let us analyze the above situations in terms of ecosystem functions. In an ecosystem, a variety of species participate in the numerous ecological processes. Each one performs one or more functions such as production, regulating water and nutrient cycling, decomposition, regulation of climate and other ambient conditions in addition to soil formation and conservation. These functions collectively create conditions that are salubrious for the existence of life. An ecosystem having higher diversity means the number of species and interactions between them which constitute the food web is large. In such a situation, the elimination of one species would have little effect on ecosystem balance. In sharp contrast, the number of species in the food web of a simple ecosystem is small. So loss of any one species has far more serious repercussions for the integrity of the ecosystem itself. 4.5.4 Causes of biodiversity loss. A variety of factors are responsible for the loss of biodiversity. In this section, we shall take up the major factors leading to loss of species of various kinds. Loss and fragmentation of habitat. Undisturbed habitats have become rare commodities in modern times. These have shrunk dramatically over the past decades as the human population and resource consumption have grown. The growing human needs requiring electricity, housing and food have impinged on the natural habitats in several ways. Dams have destroyed large sections of rivers and stream habitat. In the marine ecosystem, coastal development has wiped out coral reef and other near-shore communities. Forests too have to bear the brunt, as huge areas have been cleared for marginal agriculture and for obtaining timber. All these activities result in fragmentation of habitat of innumerable species which in due course of time completely vanish, with the loss of which the other dependent species too are wiped away, ensuing a chain of destruction.
2. Species introduction. Species introduction, accidental or intentional, is an important factor in the loss of native biodiversity of an area. The introduced species occasionally being superior, competitors establish and flourish at the expense of the original species. Notwithstanding the sudden changed pressures, the original biodiversity is wiped from that area. Examples are many. We take up the example of the bird, dodo, Fig. 18. Dodo lived only in Mauritius, a small island in the Indian Ocean. The dodo possessed two characteristics that were its eventual undoing. It had no fear of people and, therefore, could be easily clubbed to death, and it was flightless, so it had to lay its eggs on the ground. The dodo became extinct by 1681, after the introduction of pigs to the island, who devoured its eggs. The extinction of dodo may also be analyzed in terms of changed habitat conditions due to the introduction of a new species pigs to the island. In an ecosystem like an island, both the variety of habitats and the area that comprises each habitat are physically limited. As a result of such constraints, the native Animals, dodo in this case, ability to adapt to new predators and competitors is often reduced. For example, the habitat may not be large enough or diverse for the prey species, the dodo, to avoid new predators, the pigs. And the diversity of resources may not be adequate to allow an existing species to coexist with a new competitive species. Hence, the superior competitor survived and the native species perished. 3. Overexploitation of plant and animal species, forest, fisheries and wildlife resources have been overexploited, even to the point of extinction. The passenger pigeon aptly exemplifies this situation. Fig. 19. Once these were the most abundant birds in North America. They were in such immense numbers that their flocks darkened the sky during migration. There one such flock alone was 400 kilometers long and had no less than 2 billion birds. And there used to be as many as 90 nests per tree, throughout a forest of about 5 kin width and about 67 kilometers length. An immense tonnage of their droppings fertilized the forests where passenger pigeons roosted. This bird, particularly their young ones, were a delicacy. Since these were available in plenty, their price too was less. They were selectively hunted in very large numbers to cover the wastage during transportation. The young ones and adult birds were killed indiscriminately. Their rate of reproduction could not cope with the high rate of elimination, as a passenger pigeon laid just one egg. The last pigeon, Martha, died in Cincinnati Zoo in 1914, and its body is kept in U.S. Natural Museum in Washington. Like the story of passenger pigeon, each extinct species carried along its tale of destruction. The human need for food, search for precious commodities, example, ivory and pets, curiosities and collectors' items have also impinged on some species. 4. Pollution. Various kinds of pollutants strain ecosystem that affect and reduce the sensitive species. The pollutants not only affect one species, but build up along food chains. The barn owl populations of UK have suffered on this account. Not only the larger organisms, but the soil microbes also suffer from the pollutants added to the soil. The heavy metals from industrial wastes and salinization due to irrigated agriculture create adverse conditions for their survival and growth. Acid rain has destroyed vast expanse of forests in Europe. The effect of marine pollution in decimating fisheries resources are too familiar to most of us. Change in global climate. A number of intensive investigations present convincing data that predicts a change in global climate in the coming few decades. Human-caused increases in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are likely to bring about a global temperature rise of some 1 to 3 C during the iron century. It is believed that the each 1 degree Celsius rise in temperature will displace the limit of tolerance of land species some 125 kilometers towards the poles, or 150 meters vertically on the mountain. These abrupt changes may be beyond the tolerance range of many species, and it is likely that we may lose them forever. In addition, the projections also point towards a sea level rise that would submerge vast expanses of coastal areas, endangering characteristic flora and fauna of coastal zones. 4.5.5 Conserving biodiversity. In the previous subsection, we have seen the main reasons for the loss of biodiversity. The conservation of biodiversity should involve not only correcting the above fronts but also designing a forceful campaign to educate and involve all sections of the society. The campaign should include 3 basic elements, namely, saving biodiversity for posterity, in-depth study of biodiversity to explore its potentials, and using it sustainably and equitably. All this requires a clear understanding of the role played by biodiversity in ecosystems and its importance to human life. The sensitization and participation of people from every walk of life is vital for the success of conserving biodiversity. 4.6 Summary. In this unit you have studied that times all the biotic and abiotic factors within a certain area constitute an ecosystem. Within the ecosystem, each organism has a habitat, an area where it lives. In addition, each organism occupies a specific niche, i.e., the specific role it plays within an ecosystem. In an ecosystem, the groups of organisms of same species constitute a population. Various populations of organisms make up a community. The community along with a community has three basic characteristics: productivity, diversity, and resilience. Productivity is measured in terms of biomass produced. The number and abundance of species present determine the species diversity. Resilience is the ability of the ecosystem to respond to disturbance. The dominating plant species define the conditions for the existence of various kinds of life forms. The interactions amongst living organisms of a community can be divided into three categories: competition, predation, and symbiosis. The latter is further subdivided into three subcategories, i.e., commensalism, mutualism, and parasitism. Competition involves organisms of different species that strive to obtain the same needed resource. During predation, one species, the prey, becomes a resource. This, on being killed, is eaten by another species, the predator. During a symbiotic relationship, two or more organisms of different species live together in close association over a prolonged period of time, deriving mutual benefit. Commensalism is a one-sided relationship. One species benefits, whereas the other species neither benefits nor is harmed. In mutualism, both species benefit. In a parasitic relationship, one species, the parasite, benefits but the other, the host, is harmed. Resource partitioning and stratification are the mechanisms by which all the organisms secure the required resources by avoiding competition and mutual conflict. Biodiversity is the totality of genes, species, and ecosystems. Biodiversity contributes to the well-being of humans in a variety of ways. Almost any sphere of life, be it food, clothing, medicines and drugs, industries, aesthetics, and even sports and recreation, are linked to biodiversity. Above all this, biodiversity also plays an important role in maintaining the ecological balance. A large number of factors have led to the loss of biodiversity. Of these factors, loss of habitat, species introduction, overexploitation, pollution of all kinds, and the change in global climate are among the major causes for the loss of biodiversity. A forceful, long-term and sustained campaign of biodiversity conservation can minimize further damage to biodiversity. This campaign should contain the following three elements: saving biodiversity for posterity, in-depth study of biodiversity to explore its potential, using it sustainably and equitably. The sensitization of people of all walks of life is a key element for the successful implementation of the biodiversity campaign. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next video with next chapter.